Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosevich, George Stoya here from the Soonerscoop.com studios. Really good time to join Sooner Scoop. I mean, my God, we just talked to over 30 players.
Yeah, 35, I think.
35
actually.
was the total number. Talked to a bunch of the newcomers, talked to a bunch of the early enrollees, all 21 of them. It was good to catch up with a bunch of them.
Yep.
On Thursday, we're going to come back and we're going to do a lot with all of the players that we talked to. Had a bunch of really good conversations. I know that you said
Dion Burks.
Dion Burks
I
is a
put out
stud.
my top, I think, five or six.
You went row. You
Yes.
put out your own power rankings. How was that?
It was Dion Burks. Casey Thompson was a joy.
Casey Thompson. Casey Thompson spoke like somebody that has been in college for the last 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, he was fantastic. Obviously comes from a very well-respected family as well. David Stone was great. Fabici Wewu. We learned how to say his name.
That was the first
awesome.
thing I asked him. I was like, all right, I got to know. How do you pronounce this thing? I was like, oh, that's easy.
Jocelyn Malaska from right down the street.
Up in Bethany.
He was fantastic. So a lot of guys that I think you and Bob really got a ton of video of almost, I want to say, did you guys get all 35?
I don't know if we got all 35,
Very
but we got
close.
a number of them. I had a really good conversation with Spencer Brown, the offensive tackle from Michigan State that's expected to come in and kind of be a Walter Rouse from a year ago. But as we were saying, really good time to join Soonerscoop.com. $1 for 1 month. That is about as busy as it's going to get here before the start of the summer with the hoops reports and all the stuff that we're doing right here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel. If you want to check out any of the player interviews, player-specific interviews from today, you can go to the Soonerscoop.com editorial page, and it's linked on Soonerscoop.com. Obviously, if you want to become a member of the largest Oklahoma online community, it would be a really good time. Basketball's in full swing. Softball is whooping ass. I think the demise of the Patty Gasso softball program greatly exaggerated as the time of this recording. They're up, I think, on Texas A&M Commerce. What'd you say?
8-0 in the third.
Baseball's underway. Both teams opening up conference play. But we did talk to Brent Venables today for the first time since San Antonio, since the Alamo Bowl. And it was good to kind of, I guess, talk to the head ball coach for a while. It had been so long.
There was so much to ask him about.
Sure.
I mean, there's been, several hires since then. We're going to get into Zack Alley here in a minute. He's also made 2 analyst hires, Kevin Johns and Doug Deacon, special teams analyst. I think that you look at the injury situation, he goes over some of that and the depth they have. They've added, so many guys in the portal, especially in the offensive line. I know we'll get into that some too. I asked him about the general manager stuff, which has been a big, off-season topic. So
Michigan made some waves on Wednesday about that.
Yeah, Sean McGee, I believe, is who they hired, and I think it was the Wolverine, our brother site, sister site, whatever you want to call it.
Don't gender them.
The Wolverine. They reported in there that Oklahoma was maybe considering hiring him in a general manager type role. So I got to ask Brent about that today. But yeah, he got to cover a lot of different bases. It was very general. We didn't get down to a lot of the nitty gritty.
They didn't talk about who's going to be the backup cheetah.
Right. Yeah. I mean that wasn't something. I mean, we didn't even get to Javonte Barnes, which was something that we've been interested in. But still, a lot of good information. I think he ended up speaking to us about 42 minutes. So and he's long-winded, but he was good to hear from. And some welcome news. I know we were going to say this later on in the program, but his wife, Julie, cancer-free.
Fantastic.
Great news. The Oklahoman spoke to her, I think, at the state basketball tournament.
Yeah, where his daughter's playing, right?
Daughter's playing.
For Community Christian?
Yeah. So
it's pretty cool.
It sounds like they're doing really well as a family, which is you really want to hear that, too.
Well, and I think that, so often we got so wrapped up in the season, we've kind of forgot in a way that, he was doing all that stuff as she was going through chemo down in New Orleans, and just really good news, really welcome news. It was the first time that Brent had talked about Zack Alley, and it was something that we obviously tracked over at Soonerscoop.com, going into the hire of Zack Alley. But for the first time, we were able to kind of get a good idea of his relationship with Zack Alley that had been well documented. You'd wrote about, during their time over at Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, they've worked, very closely together. He was basically, Brent's right-hand man while he was the defensive coordinator at Clemson, and helped a lot with scheming and game planning and all of that. He has since gone on linebackers coach and special teams coordinator at Boise State. for a couple years. Then he was obviously, at Louisiana Monroe, and then Louisiana this past year. Jacksonville State, excuse me. But, he was – it's a different role now.
Sure.
We didn't really find out today, is Zach going to call the defense? It still sounds like Brent's going to be kind of heading that up, but he did talk a lot about, hey, he's going to be able to bring a new energy to this group. I thought it was interesting. He talked about, how he decided that they needed a new face, a new voice as they go into the SEC, and he felt like Zack Alley was the right guy to do that.
For a little bit more, here is Brent Venables talking about his new defensive coordinator hire, Zack Alley.
Zach, somebody I got a very small, circle in the coaching profession that I stay in touch with regularly. So I've obviously have done that the last several years, and just, out of nowhere, I changed course of the conversation and just felt that this was the right time for us and continue to grow and as a defense and as a program, get a guy with some fresh ideas and again a new voice, a new face as we move into the SEC. I thought this was the right time to do that, and again a guy that's going to show up with his hair on fire, a lot of energy, really bright guy, works well with people, no ego whatsoever. He figures things out. He's a great teammate, and he's as tough as all get out. Really understands offense and understands defense, and understands how to take advantage of the players that you have on your roster and build things, around that group of guys. So he's been great, along with the rest of our defensive coaches at developing an understanding for all of it. How you work cohesively in a staff room and deciding on foundationally the things that you want to install, during the course of the spring and what that schedule looks like. But if we're going to be successful, it's going to be because of a collaboration. He'll be the first one to tell you that, and it's going to take all of us to continue to make improvement where we need to make improvement, defensively. So I'm really excited about having Zach, on the team.
Probably should have said this off the top. Oklahoma opens spring football next Monday, March 11, just in case anybody thought, oh, Brent was talking to the media on Wednesday. They don't start until next week. Obviously, they'll practice next week, and then they actually break for spring break the week after, which is kind of weird, but that's the way that they've done it here over the last couple of years. So really good news on the Zack Alley stuff. It was just good to hear Brent talk about him, talk about his relationship. I'm sure that's not the last time that he's going to talk about him and Zack Alley. It'll be good to talk to Zack Alley at some point here over the course of the first couple of weeks of spring ball. But
maybe,
I hope. But it, certainly there's a lot of excitement on that side of the football. In terms of actual team news, I think the injury stuff was good to know. We did get some light shed, I guess, on what was expected. It wasn't, breaking news by any means, but Justin Harrington, he's finally heard back from the NCAA. He's been granted a medical hardship for the 2023 football season, which means he will be eligible to play in 2024 for Oklahoma. Obviously, really good news coming off of the ACL injury in the SMU game, which seems like many moons ago, but very welcome news to get Justin Harrington back into the fold.
And like you said, it was expected, but with the NCAA,
you never know.
And they got it right, thankfully, for Justin's sake. I think he's a great guy and has obviously had just a tough break when you think of his journey of, coming to Oklahoma, then leaving the team, then walking back on. Brent Venables giving him a second chance. He's torn his ACL twice now.
Sure.
He's battled some injuries. So I think it's really great news. And he's a guy, last year that was playing really good football before he got hurt. And all of a sudden when he got hurt, they kind of didn't have that same depth at Cheetah that they did. And he's kind of the perfect player to play that position in terms of
he's so versatile.
Yes, he can cover, he can blitz if you want him to. He's a good tackler. All of those things. We'll see what he looks like after the injury. He won't go through spring.
That's what I was about to say. He will not be participating full in spring ball. He'll be out there obviously, but he's not going to have that on-field time.
Him and it was also announced Andrell Anthony and Casey Thompson. All three of those guys are battling the ACL injuries. It sounds like they'll somewhat participate. They'll be around, but they're not going to be full go until the summer.
Good news there. Here is Brent Venables talking about just the importance of getting the Justin Harrington situation cleared.
It's big. Justin is, again, highly invested guy, and he's talented, can do a lot of different things. So you're always looking for big, long, fast, aggressive, physical guys, and he's those things. But he understands what commitment is and how we do what we do. So he'll bring, again, the experience from that standpoint and playmaking from that standpoint. And getting both those guys back will be huge. And so expect them to be, full go if there's no setbacks when we start up here this summer.
And when he says them, he is talking about Andrell Anthony as well as Justin Harrington there. So obviously really good news in terms of, just to get it out of the way. I'm sure that is something that even the Harrington family was probably growing a little restless with, just in terms of, having an idea of where he's going to be in, comes August, September, he's going to be at Oklahoma. So good news on that part. It is going to be important, though. I think that this spring is kind of where the you're not going to have a whole lot of guys that just make waves in terms of, oh, this guy's going to be the next Outland. But I think there is one position group that we talked about on the preview that was identified by Brent Venables today. They need to get much better at build depth, offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question that was posed to him today was, is there anywhere that you feel like you don't have enough depth, or you guys need to, prove that you do? And his immediate response was, I don't think there's any question about it. It's offensive line, is what Brent said. And there's a lot of new faces. There's 8 new guys that we talked to today. I mean, 4 true freshmen that came in as early enrollees. And then you've also got the 4 transfers. And so, and I think talking to the transfers, especially today, it was interesting hearing from those guys because they're all experienced, right? I mean, they've all played quite a bit of football. They've been at some big programs other than Fabici. I mean, he obviously is coming from North Texas, but these are guys that expect to come in and compete, possibly start for Oklahoma next year. And I think Brent and the staff are hopeful that these guys can kind of piece together an offensive line that. The truth is, a lot of people are doubting. That's the one position group that I think a lot of people say, I don't know about that group.
I don't know if they have the pieces.
Exactly. And I think getting to, talk to them today, obviously they're confident in themselves, and Brent's confident that they're going to be able to figure it out. We'll see once they get on the field. But this spring is kind of the first time that those guys are really going to get to be together. They've been working out, but it's different when you get on the field together. So I think that's why this spring is so pivotal for that group, so that Brent and Bill Beatenbow can kind of evaluate and say, okay, here's where we're at. And now we know if we need to go out and get somebody else in the spring portal.
Here is Brent Venables talking about his offensive line situation heading into the spring.
I mean, it goes without saying we got to do that on the offensive line, and really like the group of guys that that we have there. Jacob Sexton. Obviously he started several games. Troy Everett started several games as well, and that's a group of guys along with Jake Taylor, Heath Ozida, Logan Howland, Josh Bates. It's a really good group of young players, along with the freshmen that we brought in, and then the transfers that we brought in. I think we had 4 freshmen and 4 transfers. They're all going to have to play a role, and so between Garen Hatcher, Spencer Brown, Fabici, along with Michael Tarquin, and then again this group of freshmen that we brought in. We really like the group of guys. They're smart. That's an athletic group. They've got experience. Those 4 transfers all bring experience, different systems or different school, but the reason they were brought in was because of their experience and their ability both. And so getting those guys all to mesh quickly is the charge of Coach Beatenbow, but he's up for the task. But that's probably the position that everybody knows, right? That if you follow Oklahoma football, where we lost the most experience on our team, that's the group that we've got to replace.
Really enjoy talking to Spencer Brown today. He's a guy that reminds me a lot of Walter Rouse, just in terms of he's been around the block. I mean, you start asking him about questions about winter workouts or, just excitement for the spring just in general. And it was kind of one of those, I've been through this before. I also, by the way, played in the Big Ten. Yeah,
and I think the one theme, because I talked to all the 4 transfer offensive linemen, and every single one of them said, well, I wanted to come play for Bill Beatenbow. and they want to make it to the NFL. And they all talked about his prowess and getting guys to the NFL. You look at what Walter Rouse was able to do this last year, improving his stock now is definitely going to be a draft pick this year.
It's really a blueprint for kind of what they want to be able to do. And, McKay Patauer, love him or hate him out there, I think that he had a pretty good career at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
They have some, I guess, kind of a game plan in terms of what they want to be able to do and how they're going to use them.
Yeah, and I think they're hopeful that some of these freshmen can step up. I mean,
Sure.
Eugene Brooks today.
Yeah, you really liked him.
He's big. He's a monster. And I know talking to a couple people, he's been really good in the weight room so far, which is you love to hear that about a true freshman. You wonder, can he step in and play well?
To go on top of everything that he did at the Under Armour game. I know
fantastic.
that we were both over there when I asked him about that.
Yeah, I mean, he was talking about how much he's just improved over the last year. So you wonder how many steps can he take this spring and summer. So, yeah, I mean, look, is the offensive line a perfect room right now? Certainly not. It's not anywhere close. I wouldn't even say it's good right now. But I do think there's some hope that these guys can step up. There's some confidence among those guys, and there's going to be a lot of competition, which at the end of the day, that's kind of what you want.
Competition, a great thing for this offensive line, and we'll see how it works out. I don't know if they're going to really, basically find any of these big answers during the spring. You're probably not going to find out about that until you get into August, until you get into the first part of the non-conference season before the SEC play begins. But I do think that if there was one word talking about all of these offensive linemen, opportunity. There's an opportunity out there to come in, and if you show out, you could end up putting yourself into really good position to get onto the field early as a freshman, or obviously as one of these transfer portal guys. And the transfer portal guys, specifically Brown as well as Fabici, they have to come in and be guys.
Those are two that I would say I think are going to end up starting for Oklahoma next year. At least that's the way I walked away today, feeling pretty good about those two guys. We'll see about Hatchett. I think that he could really push for one of the guard spots. Michael Tarquin, he was telling me that he anticipates playing right or left tackle. We'll see. I do think all five positions are open. I think Jacob Sexton's going to win that left tackle job, and I think Spencer Brown's going to win that right tackle job. But you never know. I mean, if Michael Tarquin comes in and plays really well, he's played left and right tackle. USC kind of moved him around before he ended up getting benched. I wonder if he can come in and play at left tackle if Jacob Sexton is for some reason not ready. I thought Jacob finished the season really well last year for Oklahoma, but I do think it's going to be a competition at all five spots, and that's why they were able to take four guys, because all four think that they can come in and compete and contribute.
Yeah, and who knows if there's something out there in the spring, transfer portal wise, maybe they have they'll have room to maybe take one or two more. That'll be interesting to watch. Great opportunity there on the offensive line, as opposed to the guys across from them at practice on the defensive line. I thought it was really interesting. Obviously, it's going to be something that Brent talks about. It's going to be something that he's asked about when you talk about the guys that they're bringing in the recruiting class. I mean, you talk about you wrote about David Stone today, a highly touted, high expectations. These guys are kind of being counted on as this group that's, for the most part, going to kind of save what is a defensive line, position that has been good but not great. They need to be great if they want to have success in the SEC.
And you look at that group right now, and there's just not a ton of experience. You bring back DJ Terry, who, I said the other day that he was maybe their best defensive lineman, at the end of the season, and that's great. You get him back. That's some really good experience. He's played in the SEC. He can teach these young guys. But then at the same time, you get a devastating blow and losing Jacob Lacey.
Sure. And
now all of a sudden you're looking at your defensive line. And you're saying, okay, well, you have Grayson Halton. He hasn't played a ton. You bring back, Marcus Strong, Champ Sanders. Those are guys that they feel like can play, but they haven't played a ton. And then you look at that freshman defensive line class, and it's hard not to get excited, because I do think those guys are going to be able to play. I mean, David Stone, talking to him today, he's got a big personality online.
Yeah.
Very quiet in person, but talkative guy, very confident in himself. He understands the expectations that are around him. I think he's kind of embracing those. He said that he even has higher expectations than most people have for him. So I think that's good to hear. Jaden Jackson, just a monster of a human. I think he said today that he came in around 279 pounds. He's already up to 297.
It's fantastic.
And he said he wants to get over 300. And that's kind of the goal for all the defensive linemen, is to get around 300. So he's a guy that I think definitely could play. I know Brent said today they're looking at him playing at nose tackle. which is a huge ask of a true freshman. But I just, like I said, the bodies, they have bodies. They just don't have the experience. And I think that at the end of the day, if Jaden Jackson comes in and is super talented, they're going to play him because they have to.
Yeah. It's going to be really interesting. Here is Brent Venables talking about the situation going into the spring at defensive line.
We got good numbers there. Don't have much experience there. So, DJ Terry, I think he maybe started 7 games or 4 games last year there. And then, again, we've got some guys like Devon Sears that is going to have more opportunity. Grayson Halton. We've talked about a couple of the freshmen, along with Marcus Strong. Really like the things that he's been able to do. Champ Sanders is. We're excited about a lot of the things that he's been able to do, at this point in time. And so we'll see where all that goes. But we got a lot of work to do everywhere. But that's a position that we got to get guys better. And we got to, again, back in the day, you could play with like 3 guys. If you were deep, you could play with 3. And so now, again, we've got 8 or 9 guys there that we're dealing with. And we're going to, it's going to be a group of guys that, again, we've got to, wherever we ended the year with that group of guys, they're going to have to be a lot better than what we were. But that's the expectation. That's what our job is as a coach, and their job is as players to make a tremendous investment and then go to work, keep your head down. But I love the group of guys. I really do. It's a hungry, tough, talented group of players.
You talked about that entire defensive line group, especially the freshmen, whether it be David Stone, Jaden Jackson, Wyatt Gilmore was another guy that was out there today, as well as Nigel Smith. He kind of almost a little bit forgotten about. I mean, you talk about, and maybe this just represents how talented this class is. In past years, you get a guy like Nigel Smith, and he would be the kind of the star of the show. But with Jaden Jackson and David Stone, not to say that Nigel might have a better career than those guys. Who knows? But it seems like that group really could change the dynamic of what Oklahoma's doing on the offensive line or defensive line.
It definitely is. And I think if, 1 or 2 or 3 of those guys can come in and be contributors, then all of a sudden you can kind of show that off to future recruits and say, hey, come in and if you're talented, you're going to play. One guy you didn't mention, Danny Okoye. Sure. I mean, he looked fantastic today. I think he also said he's put on about 25 to 30 pounds. I just have to think, I'm not saying he's going to go out and start, but I think they'll find a role for him because he just looks the part, and we'll see what he looks like on the practice field. And I know he's kind of a raw talent. Yeah. He's fundamentals. He probably needs to improve those, but that guy just looks like he kind of reminds me. I mean, he's not as big as PJ Adebawore, but in terms of just like a freakish athlete type player, he definitely stands out among the group. I mean, his arms are cannons.
Speaking of PJ Adebawore, Spencer Brown was singing the praises of Oklahoma's defensive end group, whether it be him, Ethan Downs, or Mason Thomas, who came on at the end of last season. So,
I've heard he's had a fantastic
and Trace Ford as well. I mean, that's a good group of veteran guys that can kind of take these defensive ends under their wing.
Even a guy like Caden Woolard coming over from Miami, Ohio. I know I spoke with him for a few minutes today as well. He's very confident. Again, another guy. It's been around the block, and it's not to say that Miami, Ohio is on the same page as Oklahoma, but this guy has played a lot of football. He comes in and is very experienced, has had really good statistics, and is a guy that feels like he can come in and contribute.
As we said at the top, we're going to get into a lot of the player stuff, the individual interviews that we did on Wednesday, as well as maybe delving in a little bit more to expectations for what these guys should be or where we think that they might be during the spring here. We'll do that on Thursday. This is kind of a Brent Venables specific recap review, if you will, coming out of Wednesday's opening press conference to kick things off for the spring. As far as there's been a lot of movement within the program. Yeah. Obviously, you have a bunch of analysts coming in. You have a bunch of personnel that are going in, going out. In terms of this general manager thing that we mentioned at the top, could you maybe just explain what this is for a lot of people? I know that Brent quizzed you, and we'll get to that here in a second, but just explain kind of what the ins and outs of what that would be.
Well,
and maybe why teams are doing this.
Yeah, I think, the reason why teams are going out and hiring a quote-unquote general manager is the transfer portal, NIL, trying to facilitate these type of deals, trying to evaluate talent, because there's so many guys out there that you're trying to bring onto campus. I think Michigan's a really good example. They announced today, like I said earlier, hiring Sean McGee as their, quote unquote general manager. He's going to work in the athletic department as well. It's just a position that I think is going to become needed at these major programs. And, you can call it a general manager, you can call it chief of staff, whatever it is. Basically, it's a position that can take some things off the head coach's plate, allows them to, go out and evaluate talent, say, man, I think this player is worth X amount of money, or, worth this amount of NIL deals, or whatever it may be. And I think Oklahoma, and Brent kind of answers it here in a second, but, they're doing kind of a restructuring, I would say, of the current staff to allow them to be able to do those type of things. And I think that they have some people already in the building that they feel comfortable doing that.
And it certainly seems like it's Brent, they've been trying to do this for a while.
Yeah.
This isn't something that they're trying to react to everybody else. I think that this is something that has always kind of been a little bit of a vision of what Brent brought with him from Clemson.
Definitely. I mean, they've been working behind the scenes on it. I don't think they're ready to announce exactly who's in what role,
Sure.
and what the titles are. And a lot of that has to do with contracts and, all that comes with, different titles. But they've definitely been ahead of the game when it comes to this stuff. I just think that they're cautious on what you're exactly calling these people, because there still are, NCAA rules. As much as people aren't following them, there are rules in terms of what, a general manager can do, what the coaching staff can do in terms of negotiating NIL deals and trying to facilitate those type of things. You have to be working with kind of an outside consultant or firm. In this case, Oklahoma's and the one that they're working with is Altius. Michigan is also working with Altius in this scenario. So it's a definitely a tightrope that they have to kind of walk right now. And I think that's why Brent, was kind of, I think he was a little hesitant today to talk completely about what their plans are to do. But I know from behind the scenes that they're definitely working on a lot of different things, putting some people in some different roles to kind of help with the NIL and transfer portal and everything that's going on in college football.
Here is Brent Venables answering George's question from today about the general manager situation.
College football is changing a lot. NIL, transfer portal. You're seeing a lot of programs go out and hire a quote-unquote general manager. I'm wondering, how have you maybe adapted to that? And is a general manager something that you guys are interested in doing, and maybe either elevating people within your staff, or how do you, I guess, approach that?
Yeah. So what do you think a general manager is?
I think it depends.
Is it like a chief of staff or a
It could
director
be,
of
or it
football
could be
ops?
a player personnel guy or something like that. I'm sure it's different for every program.
Right. Well, and again, I think we'd be naive if we didn't look at the change that's going on in college football, both currently and the landscape. The toothpaste is definitely out of the tube and not putting it back in. So we always looking at, again, all of our processes, our programs, our support systems on how we can continue to improve and be efficient, be really good at what we're doing, and finding, I always look at trying to hire people that are smarter than me, and to surround myself with really good, intelligent people that have either the experience where you want to go, or they have the acumen to learn and grow and get better and lead. So, we're always looking at ways to get better. There's some restructuring, reorganization that we're looking at doing over the next, and we've been working on this for 16, 18 months. And where, again, a lot of it's where we feel like college football is going, and making sure that we're in a position of strength. We're not reacting when it does happen. This is going to continue to be just kind of a process, and you wish it was a little more congruent, but it's kind of a piecemeal is what's going on in college football. And so we've been working hard and diligently at trying to anticipate, the things that we need to do off the field programmatically to strengthen us. And so that'll be somewhere here in the near future.
You guys had a nice little conversation, a little back and
did,
forth
yeah.
there. You were able
Giving me a
to
quiz.
give him a little knowledge, weren't you?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a valid question from Brent back
Sure.
to me, because I think, again, like,
Well, I think it's a lot, like a lot of things that you'll find in this sport, and maybe even in business in general. I guess it's easy for me to say that. Never really been in business, but business owner, no big deal. I will say, titles, it seems like, are usually something that a lot of people get wrapped up into, but at the end of the day, you're part of this bigger conglomerate or whatever, a football program that everybody's kind of moving towards the same direction. And for specifically for this, they're trying to do the stuff that maybe a head coach just simply doesn't have time for in today's world. And I maybe that's not the right way to say it. Doesn't have the ability to be able to go do.
Well, and I think a lot of people want to associate general manager with what you see in the NFL.
Sure.
And I think in some cases that will be what, college football programs will do. They'll hire somebody that can evaluate talent, see how much they're worth for a contract or an NIL deal or whatever that is. But in this case, I don't think that that's necessarily what Oklahoma's doing. Like they're not going out and hiring an NFL GM to come run things, at least from my understanding. Now I think they'll have some people in place that are evaluating talent, assessing how much a player is worth, and those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, Brent Venables is going out and choosing which players they want to recruit,
right,
and guys that they want on their team. But I do think there's something to allowing these coaches to be freed up. They've got so much already on their plate. Their staffs, they're limited in how big, how many assistants they can have. They can only have 10 assistants. And so being able to go out and hire these analysts or player personnel guys or a general manager, whatever that looks like, I think allows somebody like a Brent Venables to just focus on football and focus on the X's and O's and those sorts of things while the craziness of NIL and the transfer portal are going on. And he can just be like, okay, well, we want this guy, figure out how it works.
A familiar name within the program has come up when talking about that general manager position, and it is Curtis Lofton.
Yeah, and that's been reported out there by one site that said that that he's going to be the general manager. That's not the case from what we understand. Now, could he be in an assistant general manager role at some point? Definitely, and I do think that he's doing some of these things that we're talking about in terms of evaluating players and helping the staff learn about NIL and those sorts of things. He's obviously running the Soul Mission program, which is a huge part of what Oklahoma's doing and teaching players about how to use their finances and get NIL deals, those sorts of things. But I don't think that he is necessarily the quote unquote general manager of Oklahoma football right now. I do think, though, that he has a large hand in what they're doing on and off the field.
Here is Brent Venables talking about kind of where Curtis Bolton, I knew that I was going to do that. I was talking to George earlier, and I said Curtis Bolton.
We do love Curtis Bolton, too.
Love Curtis Bolton. Buzzy. Baby got in a fight with Mike Stoops at the OU Texas game. Maybe. Allegedly. We'll keep it that way. As far as Curtis Lofton, here is Brent Venables talking about him.
Curtis has been doing what he has been doing in the last couple of years. He's been fantastic. Soul Mission as a whole is fantastic. And remember, Soul Mission isn't just one job. It's again holistic development, and they're leaders, they're mentors, they're recruiters, they're therapists, they're competitors. Curtis brings a lot to the table. Same things that he did as a player. Now he's using those same transferable skills as a leader in our program. So he's been fantastic.
Very interesting. What did you make of that?
I think that Curtis is playing a larger role than maybe Brent's willing to share just yet, or they're going to move him into a position where he's doing more things, and we'll see. I think it was interesting today, like I mentioned earlier, the report from Michigan that Joe Castiglione tried to recruit Sean McGee, who's now the general manager at Michigan, to come to Oklahoma in a similar role. So I wonder, too, do they bring anybody in from the outside?
Sure.
I'm not sure. I think that was a while ago that they tried to get him to come in. I think now Curtis could maybe step into a similar type role. We'll see. But I do think that, again, it speaks to Oklahoma has been ahead of the curve on this in terms of they know they have to have some sort of structure in place that's going to help Brent as well as the rest of the staff evaluate talent, get NIL deals done, look at the transfer portal in advanced ways. And I think that, again, Brent didn't want to get into too much of it today, but they are definitely, like he said, restructuring, reorganizing kind of the way that the staff internally is right now.
It'll be interesting to monitor here, throughout the next couple months. And, I would imagine that they want to try to get something in place before the start of the football season, before the move
I
to
maybe
the
even
SEC.
say maybe
Next couple weeks, maybe?
Yeah, spring portal
Sure.
is coming up. I think April 16th is when it opens. I looked it up the other day. So I wonder if that's something. And again, I think those guys are already kind of working on that.
Mm-hmm.
It just we may not get an official announcement on exact titles for some time.
Very good. It was good to get back over there, talk to a bunch of the
Yeah,
football
it was
players
awesome.
today. It feels like
Football's like right around the corner, and it's not.
it's always a little bit of a
Yeah.
CTs because it's like, all right, spring ball, and then you go out there to practice and stuff. I think that's what it really ticks up for me. But I mean, my God, talking to 30 plus players today as well as Brent, it was obviously kind of good to get back at that mojo.
Yeah.
One other thing that we wanted, or at least I wanted to hit on. The special team stuff, I know that we'll talk about the analyst stuff that he did talk about, the 2 hires that they had made here over the last couple of weeks. One that you had reported, the Kevin Johns from Duke. So that's a really interesting hire. I would love to catch up with Jackson at some point and kind of get his insight into just kind of what that's going to be like.
Even Seth Luttrell. I mean, again,
Sure.
we've said it on the previous show, but that's somebody that he has worked very closely with Kevin Johns, and I would assume Brent talked about it a little bit today. That a big reason why they ended up hiring him is he's very familiar with Seth Luttrell, but even Emmett Jones. I had forgotten that. Obviously, that Emmett Jones was, I believe, at Texas Tech the same time Kevin Johns was there, helping coach the wide receivers, and was, I think, a co-offense coordinator. So, again, some overlap from all those guys.
A little bit of continuity going back to the Seth Luttrell, Joe John hires.
And I just think that I've said this a couple times now, but I think Brent's done a really good job. We'll see how these hires pan out, but from just looking at the paper, these have all been pretty good hires. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Zack Alley and kind of how he fits, but Doug Deacon, I mean, he was a guy that was at San Diego State, I think, almost 20 years.
Yeah.
They had a really good special teams unit under his direction. That's clearly a place they need to improve.
That's the one thing that I wanted to hit on before we got out of here. I mean Brent flat out said it. Like, they have to be better in the special teams.
Yeah, I think he was talking about, I think they only finished in one category. They finished in the top 5, and that was kickoff. And I think that was mostly because they just kicked it through the end zone most of the time. But they need to fix the fumbling on kickoff returns. Obviously, they struggled on punt return with Gavin Freeman. Sounds like that's going to be an open competition. We got to talk to Tyler Keltner and Liam Evans today at kicker. It sounds like they're going to compete for the starting kicking job, as well as Zach Schmidt. Zach Schmidt's going to be in that competition. But they need to definitely improve. And I think, again, hiring a guy like Deacon who's coached a lot of special teams throughout the years, I think will really help them.
No doubt. All right, it's going to be a lot of fun here as Oklahoma gets into what will be spring football for the 2024 season, and then get into the summer, and the SEC stuff will be upon us, and then all of a sudden we'll be in August, and probably booking trips all over the southeastern part of the country.
We probably need to start looking into that.
It's still going to be weird.
Oh yeah, but I've heard that OU fans have already started to.
I'm sure. If you weren't booking that stuff, when the schedule came out, I'm sure you're behind the 8 ball.
I think you definitely are. So we might be behind the 8 ball.
Well,
but we'll figure it out. That's Carrie's. That's Carrie's problem.
We are going to Oxford.
That's going to be awesome. I'm
that was more of an 8 ball joke. You'll get it someday. All right. Well, that's good. By the way, we'll be right back here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel talking with all the player stuff, really kind of delving into some of the individual guys that we were able to talk to on Wednesday at Spring Football Media Day. So really good time. Really good time around these parts.
It's good to be back in the studio with you, Eddie.
It is. It is. It's good to share the spotlight, even though it's probably a little bit brighter on some of us than others. You know what I mean? All righty. For George, I'm Eddie. We'll talk to you on Thursday, delving into a little bit more of the player stuff from the media day on Wednesday. Talk to you then.